Social media has been credited with everything from kindling romance to putting Barack Obama in the White House. So it's not surprising that businesses are finding platforms like Facebook and Twitter useful tools for employee relations. But does this really work? And if so, how? Joining us now are INSEAD professors who have done some research on social media and its role in the workplace. Andrew Shipilov, Kiwi, welcome to INSEAD Knowledge.
Thank you. Thank you.
Andrew, you've recently published a paper on benefiting from social media inside organizations. What can social media help businesses achieve that wasn't possible before?
Well, first of all, it's important to emphasize that what we look at is social media inside the firm. And that was the focus of our study. And as we were doing this study, we learned that social media inside organizations can do two useful things. First of all, it helps information flow easier across different functional boundaries. So marketing can now talk better with sales, with HR, with finance, with operations. And social media facilitates this kind of conversation. Another useful thing that social media does is to facilitate information exchange across different hierarchical levels. That is, CEOs can now talk more easily with mid-level executives, and mid-level executives can talk with employees, and the other way around.
But you talk about the need to use social media to build emotional capital, but this doesn't sound very business-like.
Indeed, this is a very important question, because emotions tend to be viewed in business as something irrational or dysfunctional. Yet we found that it could serve very important purposes, especially in the context of social media. So first of all, let's understand what are the basics of social media. It is a means for people to exchange very personally valuable information to people whom are more like their friends and their trusted colleagues. They're not just your ordinary business person who you can exchange instrumental information about. That means that people had to have a sense of community. They had to feel bonding as a community. They had to feel like-minded people. And to build a strong community, economic transactions alone, you pay me, I pay you, is necessary but not always sufficient. What we need more over economic transactions are the sense of emotional benefits that we experience in dealing with each other. It is the sum of these emotional benefits that we call under the general term emotional capital.
And it's also, I'd like to add also something that this may sound obvious, that you need to use social media to build emotions. The truth is that as we were doing research in many companies, we've discovered that this is not very obvious to many organizations, and that the dominant mindset with which people approach social media interventions inside the firm is to provide the technological infrastructure and then hope that communities will form and that the instrumental benefits such as the lower costs or higher revenues, they appear. But it just doesn't work this way.
Yeah.
And the most important finding that what we learned, and this hence we're talking about emotional capital, is that in the organizations, executives have to first focus on building emotional capital with social media in those communities. Once the emotional capital is built, then the instrumental benefits can arise. But without emotional capital, instrumental benefits from the social media use, which is the lower cost, higher revenues, greater innovation, they simply will not materialize.
So can you give us an example of a company where this was successfully deployed and another where it wasn't?
Yes. We could give, first of all, we have done research with over 1,000 executives and do a close study of over 30 companies. But we want to point out two kind of very illustrative company examples in our research paper. One is TechCo, which is this guy's name for a very large IT companies based somewhere in Western Europe. And second one is Tupperware, which is also based somewhere in Western Europe, which is based in the Baltic and Scandinavian countries. Why? So TechCo is that large IT companies was a company that had a lot of resources, of course, in IT know-how, IT skills, IT deployment. And yet that was, ironically, the company, like many other IT companies, was largely unsuccessful in deploying social media and not reaping much of the benefits that were expected from social media, such as, in their own terms, increased revenues or higher employee morale or better sharing information inside an organization. Very few of these benefits materialize in the case of TechCo. And here we have the case of Tupperware, kind of more a sales-oriented companies, which is, compared to TechCo, is much less IT savvy, yet was able to reap many concrete benefits from social media in terms of increased revenues, increased sales, and higher employee morale.
But is it possible, I mean, does it seem fair to compare a company like Tupperware and a tech company, and as far as social media is concerned? On one side, we've got a group of soccer moms who are spending their free time organizing Tupperware parties, and on the other side, you've got a group of IT engineers who are maybe not that good at interacting between each other.
We were hoping to see, in fact, great successes within the technological world, within the IT companies, and failures in the organizations like Tupperware, in which they just don't get the kind of the nitty-gritty details of technological implementation. What we learned, however, it was not about technology. It was about emotions. It was about building emotional capital. And precisely maybe because the business model of Tupperware actually existed for the past 60 years around building emotions, they were successful, and the people inside Tupperware were successful in using social media.
Another term that I found interesting in your paper was an authentic leader. Now, what does it take to be an authentic leader? Can you describe what the essence of one is?
Well, authentic leader is somebody, again, whose actions, beliefs, and values and statements are aligned. Very often we see leaders in the organizations who say one thing, but they do the opposite thing. And what has changed with social media is that if the leader chooses to engage in social media, that person, he or she, should be ready to realize that her actions or his actions and her statements and his statements and beliefs will be transparent and will be looked at by thousands of employees. And if the employees or other members of the social media community will sense that this leader is fake, this leader doesn't mean what he or she says. The person says one thing on the video which gets posted on YouTube, but then that person is actually doing something different in one department of his or her organization. That will spread very quickly. And if that spreads very quickly, that's when the cynicism settles in. This is why trust is important. This is why feeling that whoever leads this community is authentic is important. Because if people don't follow the leader, and we know that, as human beings, we like to follow leaders. I mean, one way or the other, somehow deep on our genetic makeup, we are programmed. We'd like to follow somebody. We like role models. And if we believe that the role model says the 100% what we thought that role model was, then that we actually value that person, we're going to follow them. If that person is fake, and through social media we discover that person is fake, then we're cynical, and that initiative basically blows up. And probably the sort of a tagline of our paper would be that you need to build communities first, and then money will follow. If you use social media to get the money without building the communities with emotional capital inside, money will not follow.
Thank you very much for being with us on INSEAD Knowledge.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.